Showtime. We are live. Hi, this is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
This is Father Patrick Briscoe.
And welcome to Livesplaining, special edition of Godsplaining. This is a very special edition because Father Patrick, as you can tell, is not in his room. He is in an airport. Father Patrick, welcome to Livesplaining for another couple minutes or so. Where are you going? What are you doing? And what are you up to?
Thank you. Well, I'm just coming off of our men's retreat, which we had in the mountains of North Carolina, North Carolina, in fact, actually. And I am on my way to Huntington, Indiana, where we have our headquarters of our Sunday visitor. We've got a few strategy meetings this week. And so I'm traveling out for those tonight, just on the tail end. So just checking in for a couple minutes here before I jump on my plane and head
That's
west.
Right. Okay, so, this episode of Livesplaining is to deal with what we were doing in the wilderness and the men's wilderness retreat. And I've seen some questions from some of the men, and maybe there's some men on here. But since you're going to be leaving pretty quickly, Father Patrick, what do you want to say about the men's wilderness retreat? What was it up? What were we up to? What did you like? And all of that.
Yeah, so our theme for the men's wilderness retreat was stoicism. And it was a great opportunity for me to think about how Stoic trends are taking off and impacting our culture. A lot of guys have become interested in Stoicism lately. There's a lot of data about the rise in book sales, for example, of classic Stoic texts like Marcus Aurelius' Meditations or Epictetus's Handbook. And those texts, among others, Marcus and so forth, the growing interest in those texts signals an interest in the philosophical movement. But we can also see things like the explosive growth of Stoic discussion channels in places like Reddit. So we know that guys are picking up these texts and then they want to swap around ideas about Stoicism. So it's a major current, right? The Greco-Roman philosophical movement is a major current now getting picked back up in our American culture. So we wanted to talk about it. And I appreciated the chance to think about what Stoicism means today, and how it's really impacting us, apart from just recounting what are some of the basic ideas, right? That was what I especially appreciated this. Saying, well, what is this thing really doing? What is good about the rise of this movement, and what needs to be challenged about it? Now, of course, we did all that in the absolutely stunning setting of two fun camps. So a special thanks to Adam Truffin and his family who hosted up at Camp Chasatanga, which is a marvelous boys camp there just outside of Brevard in North Carolina. And Adam puts together each year, he's done this retreat for us several years, acting as our faithful guide, puts together great adventures. So we had a couple awesome hikes, but also messed around in campus. The last couple of years we've been in the girls' camp. So again, the family owns two camps. We were staying down in Catalea, which is the girls' camp. This year we were up at Chasatanga at the boys' camp at the end of the season there, which meant that we got to take full advantage of some things that boys' camp has to offer the girls' camp doesn't, like a massive water slide, which is fantastic. I absolutely loved it. That send sesh, as they call it, that send session on the water slide was absolutely a favorite event of mine. That was a really good time.
Yeah, and there was zip lining. There was lots of hiking in, I think, the Blue Ridge, or the foothills. Yeah.
No problem. Yeah, we're up in the Mountain Parkway, and you're really up there in the mountains.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Because
Balsam was the peak that we were on.
Balsam Peak. Okay, yeah. And it's not like, it's not Switzerland, it's not Father Gregory's Alps or that kind of thing, but it's America, and you get to see over multiple states, which is beautiful. But you get to play around. Adam, who's the camp director there, shout out again to them. That's a great camp there, Chasatanga or whatever that was. And it's really fantastic. And you just get a chance to play around, you could say, and to enjoy the outdoors, enjoy men's company. All the retreats are different, but the men's wilderness retreat is a great time to just spend time together as guys, and talk together and do plenty of things. Maybe, I don't know, how do you do a women's retreat for Godsplaining? Don't know how that would go, but the men's retreat is fantastic. Ladies retreat, Livesplaining. I don't know. Put in the comment box. Send an email if you want a ladies a ladies' retreat, and we'll figure something out. Maybe I'll have a Nashville sister or something on there. But it was great to spend time with guys who were, all sorts of backgrounds, also the different age groups. I think I was the oldest guy there, but that's fair enough. That's usually the case. And to see young dads and young men who are interested in the faith, interested in hanging out and spending time with each other, but also interested in learning and in debating ideas and thinking about the importance of Christianity and the difference between Christianity and just pure philosophy, you could say, and the value of discipline and stoicism, and then the need to fix that in a sense or add a little bit to it from the passions and such. So it was just a great time, and with good leadership, like Adam gave us, we really directed, and we like discipline, so we like order, we like fun. We all had all of those, so that was great.
It's good to be tired. That's one thing that I really like about the retreat. You feel worn out, but not in the kind of exhausted, driven down way that I typically am in day to day. I'm just tired from the fun. Outdoors tired is a completely different kind of tired. So it lends to a different kind of sleep and a whole different rhythm.
That's true. Most of our exhaustion in the modern life, since most of us sit behind desks all day, and the guys would say the same thing, is a kind of like emotional, kind of psychological exhaustion of just having to answer 2,500 emails every day and then have to do that the next day. It's kind of a weariness of life. Whereas out there, you're tired because you're actually physically tired, but you're tired because you're having fun, and you're trying to catch sleep when you can, but you're okay with missing a little bit of sleep on these occasions. And I'm sure the married guys, they're missing sleep all the time, of course, but it's a physical exhaustion is a different kind of exhaustion. And there's something restorative about it, cleansing about it in a way. And then when you get back, like I got back, and I spent the next day in kind of a fog, because again, getting a little bit older here. But it was great, and it was great to, again, all of these retreats are fantastic. If you haven't done one yet, I'm sure if you're on this Livesplaining, you probably thought about it or have done one. It's great for us because we get to meet people, actually see faces. Generally, you just see our faces, and I see just our faces on this sort of screen. But on these retreats, you get to actually meet the audience, you could say, to meet the group, the community, and it gives me a better sense of who I'm talking to. And that's great. So it feels more human. You don't have to do that all the time. Obviously, the podcast is a podcast, but it's a nice way to check in and make sure that there are actually people on the other side of the screen there, and not just like random comments in the boxes. So that's great. I love that part of it.
Yeah, and I'll echo that and say, this is the third year we've done the men's wilderness retreat, and there are a handful of guys that are very committed to it. There were guys that couldn't make it this year that I missed, and that's a precious thing because it's a real community. It's not just people showing up for something, and real friendships, real relationships, growing and being strengthened there. I want to say too, in the same way that the exhaustion is different, the prayer is different on the retreat. And I think there's something about the natural beauty of it all that informs how we can pray. Like, I did my meditation as you did, Father Bonaventure, in this little ad hoc Blessed Sacrament chapel that was open, so we had screens, very open to the elements. And then, praying my rosary, walking through the woods around camp. That's a different scene than our very urban monastery in Washington, D.C. And it lends a nice radio. That's cool. It lends a different quality, a different character to the prayer itself, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. It's a sense of like you say to God, like, look, this isn't the perfect circumstances, but I know you're here, and I want to be here with you too. And that's really great because I usually pray in the same place as basically in a chapel or something. So this is really an excellent experience. Yeah. So if you're thinking about the men's retreat, I'd encourage you to sign up for it. There'll be plenty of testimonials, I'm sure, the guys. But of course, the slots are few and far in between. So whenever we do, if we do it again next year, which I assume we will, I jump on that. But it's good to do, and retreats in general. It's just a couple days. You don't need much but just to get away from things. It allows you to take a new perspective on things, and they're different than vacations. Vacations are kind of passive experiences, you could say, whereas these are rich experiences of kind of giving you things to go back with, not just relaxing really, but like re-energizing certain elements of the life.
So, Father Bonaventure, question as we go out from this retreat: do you think we did it? Did we save Stoicism?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. The goal was to we read Epictetus's Handbook, which is a very short little book. It's kind of the greatest hits of a larger book of his called the Discourses, and it talks about really drilling down what Stoicism is not just a bunch of sound bites, but actually a system of thought that has a lot going for it in terms of reason and control and the focus of on providence, and what's up to you is something you can control, and what's not up to you is something you take as it is, and that's helpful and also true. But then we also have to add dimensions like above that. We have to add God and say what's up to us is sometimes asked for by us by God. And also what's not up to us is still in his control, loving God. And also integrating the lower parts. Stoicism doesn't have a lot about the passions, or at least the passions are not Stoics' friends for all sorts of reasons. Whereas for Christians, the passions are super important to us, and we need to train them, and we get good information from them as opposed to being always hindered by them. So I thought you have to add in a personal God who loves you, and the passions. And Stoicism he can come in. He's all right. He's all right. But I'm pretty
I
positive about Stoicism in general, but I think there's a lot of good in there that just needs
right.
encouragement. Like so much of our moral life and so much of our general lives is we don't need to do an overhaul with our lives. That seems impossible. We need just tuning up and fixing a few things and adding some pieces to it of the imperfections to move towards perfection.
Yeah, I would describe myself as open to aspects of Stoicism. I mean, Aquinas uses Seneca all over in his Summa, but I would say that coming out of the retreat, I'm very excited actually because of the potential here that is in this tradition, because there are so few legitimate bridges between our culture and the depths of the Christian faith today. There are just very few. There are very few serious currents that are worthy partners. And as I was grappling with these texts, I realized there was something here that I think demands a lot more of my attention. One of the things that I liked thinking about, was hinting that, more and more young men are picking up Stoic thought. They're becoming interested in Stoicism. I think part of it is because they're just sick of being tossed around in these vague currents of morality. They want to stand for something.
Yeah.
They're tired of feeling weak. They're tired of being beaten down. And Stoicism is the kind of thing that challenges a man and draws him out toward excellence. And there's something very deeply compatible with Christianity in that.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's a matter of spiritual training and spiritual asceticism. Exodus 90 is, you could think in this sort of terms as well. But I think the culture isn't interested in kind of silliness anymore. We're not in that kind of culture. The culture that matters is interested in seriousness. And Stoicism is a serious way into that. And Christians have a way of saying you can have that and more. I think that's what we want to do in general with the culture, is to say there's good here, but we can do better. We can do better. And Stoicism has that kind of baked into it, but I think that's right. Yeah.
Father Bonaventure, do you have any parting thoughts about our retreat?
No, I was just happy to share with you. It's always a joy to do Godsplaining retreats with two priests. So Dominicans are always best together. A Dominican by himself is just a Dominican. He's barely a Dominican, but a Dominican with another Dominican is like a bunch of Dominicans. So it's always great to share because we're all different, but we kind of work together. So I hope that also we can model. It's great to model community for everybody and enjoy each other's company, because friendship is super important.
It made me think about those little missions we would go on in a bishop. You get tagged to go out. Doing whatever little thing for Father James or for our novice brothers. Except it wasn't, a little novitiate mission. It was real. It was real preaching and a task and a real expression of our vocation and of our community life, as you're pointing to.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, I think, do we have to wish you bon voyage?
Yes, I should probably.
So I can get on the questions here. It's just going to be me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I should probably wander over to this gate. It's boarding group 8 of 9, so I've got another group and a little bit more that I can wait for. But I should be responsible here and say goodbye. So, friends, I'm sorry for dragging you out to 8 o'clock here, and Father Bonaventure for abandoning you. But thanks for letting me check in. I just wanted to share how excited I was about this retreat. So.
We're always happy to see you, even with a beard. So there you go. Look at that. See, look at that old guy.
It
Look at that
changes a man.
strong man there. It changes a man, makes him better. Okay, that's great.
It's
Father
a
Patrick, safe
man.
travels to you and all your journeys, and I'll see you back at the homestead in just a couple weeks or a week or a day or something.
Yeah, thank you, Father Bonaventure.
Cheers to you. God bless. All right, it's just me, and now it's weird because I don't have anyone else, nor do I have the airport background sound. But if you want to ask personal questions about Father Patrick, now that he's not here, I can answer them. But let's get to our Patreon questions. Now, the first one is a little bit long, but I'm going to read it, and it has two out there, so I'm probably going to cut off in the second one. But here we go. Let's check it out. And then we've got I see some comments from some of our fellow Stoic bros, especially the Cane Toads, which is my team. Which dominated at bombardment. I don't know why that we're so great at that, but there was a good group of guys there, so it was good. And Landry was our team captain, so shout out to Landry. All right, here we go. First one. Okay, and this is from Nate. Here we go. I think it's from Nate. Thank you so much for all your work. May God please continue. Your families, blah, blah, blah. Please could I ask a question? I'm sorry if it doesn't make sense. Not okay for live. Let's try it. I was just wondering, what is the difference between Catholic theology and philosophy and Thomistic theology and philosophy? I've been going through Aquinas 101 videos. Good, excellent. And I'm interested to learn more about Aquinas' thought, but I'm just a layman. That's what most people are, I suppose. Not a philosopher theologian, so I'm worried I don't want to learn anything non-Catholic. Well, if you're reading Aquinas 101, you're doing like that stuff, or you're following the leads from there, you're good. So anything that says Thomas Aquinas is usually pretty good. It confuses me, say, learning the thought of Aquinas or Augustine or Ratzinger or whoever rather than the Catholic thought. Okay, I'm sorry if that question doesn't make sense. Please, could I also ask, love to hear more about Father Bonaventure, Father Pine's PhD. Be possible to share a little about the experiences. We've done that. It's a trek. But anyway, okay. Let me ask this one here. So this is Nate, and maybe I'll get back to the other question. So Catholic thought and Thomistic thought. So there are a bunch of schools in Catholic thought. Catholic Church is a big church, as you know, and there's lots of different devotions, right? There's Divine Mercy Chaplet, obviously. There's the Rosary. There's all sorts of things. Plenty of devotions I don't even know about. Marian consecration, this sort of thing. But they all fall under the umbrella of Catholic thought because they have a core to them, of course, with Jesus and the Blessed Mother and the saints and different things like that. Okay, good. So just like there are different devotional practices, there are also different schools of thought. So in the sense of like just that there's different devotional hearts, we all have different hearts in a way. We have minds that have just differences. And I should say, the truth of God is not like the truth of, I don't know, like beekeeping or even mathematics, where it's like finite. I mean, mathematics has infinite numbers and such, but there's a sort of compassing about that because the object, even though there's some kind of infinite element to it, most of our human objects of study, whether physics, chemistry, biology, what have you, are not really infinite, right? We have to discover more things, but they're not infinite. But God and his mysteries, that's what Catholic theology and faith is about. God and his mysteries are infinite. So in a sense, the more you study it, the more you realize there's more to go. It's like a pool that just keeps getting deeper. Why? Because you'll never fully comprehend God. Even seeing him in the Beatific Vision, he's still not like us. We can't know a person that well, let alone a divine person that way. He has to reveal himself. And so when he reveals himself and attempts to reveal his infinity, you could say, it kind of fragments a bit as we receive it in the right way. And the Catholic Church has a bunch of different schools, you could say, that play more or less nice with each other, but they're trying to get at different aspects of the mystery of it. So, for instance, Thomistic theology and philosophy, the Thomistic school, which is generally a Dominican school, is centered on the St. Thomas Aquinas and his followers and his brothers. That's why we call him St. Thomas and not Aquinas, because he's our brother. And it focuses on particular elements and aspects of Catholic theology as the really important ones. So a lot based in Aristotle, a lot based in the natural goodness of the world, a lot based in a philosophical, rigorous account, with the intellect kind of leading the charge. So those sort of things. Then we have other schools like Franciscans. Now they have a bunch of schools. Bonaventurian school in a way, not me, but St. Bonaventure. But then Duns Scotus, then Occam, and then you've got some others in there. And the Franciscan school emphasizes less so the intellect first, but you could say the will. So whereas for a Thomist, you kind of like but you enter the virtue of charity through the virtue of faith, you could say. And the Franciscans want to go straight to the charity business and also then have faith related to that. So you get some different emphases in there. But of course, the dogmatic core of all of them is set by the church. And that's the catechism. So at the end of the day, the most important Catholic theological document, at least for the layman, is the Catechism of the Catholic Faith, which was put out, I think, in 1994 by John Paul II. Ratzinger was a big player in that. And Ratzinger has his own kind of aspects, but we can get distracted, I think, and play politics and think like Democrats and Republicans are like Franciscans and Dominicans. And it's not true, because the core is the same, the creeds, the revelation, the dogmas of the faith, right? But how those are particularly expressed, there's little nuances and shading. It's a bit like the Gospels, right? I don't know if you've probably picked up Bibles before. I expect you have. And they have 4 Gospels in there, right? And that's not a mistake. It's not as if the Gospels, they took 4 and they forgot they already had 3 and then they felt bad about not including John or something. Each of the Gospels brings out a particular angle or dimension of Christ, right? So Matthew's Gospel brings out his Jewish kind of Messiah aspect to him. And that's the lens that you read it through. Mark brings out the suffering, it's the whole thing is like to the cross and preparing yourself for that. And then Luke has the kind of Gentile focus. Jesus is the savior of the world, not just of the Jews, but focusing on, he also said a lot about the Gentiles and bringing the nations. And then, of course, John's is the kind of eagle. That's the vision for him. It has this eagle-eye view of Jesus as the kind of divine Son of God, right? He's the Son of Man, which is a divine term, actually, in the scriptures. They're all the same Jesus, but they have different aspects, and that's why you might find yourself relating better or more easily to Jesus through one of them than, say, the others. The church calendar has us read through them on the yearly cycle, and then John gets thrown in all over the place. But they're all aiming at the same person. In the same way, of course, in a lesser, non-revealed sense, even St. Thomas is not revelation. Those give you different, in a sense, impressionistic pictures of the true faith. And so you have these different schools that bring out different elements of it. And since theology is not just about revelation, but also thinking through it, it means that we have to play a part in unpacking the mysteries and the doctrines of the faith. And as we unpack it through time and space, with each other in community, we bring out different elements of it. But it's in a sense of unpacking from the same present and realizing that there's a lot more in there than we thought there was. And different schools have different emphases. So you might want to stick to one or two or something, but I would never say that you should do the exclusion of others. It's too hard to compass all of them, just like it's too hard to compass all of the devotions, right? You just pick the ones that work for you, as long as they're good. And the main schools of Catholic theology are good. So you stick with the ones that, you might be formed in. Carmelite spirituality has its own kind of theological emphases. But it's beautiful to have the diversity that still has a unity. Oftentimes there's pluralism, or you might see that out there, but it's not pluralism in the Catholic faith. It's just unity and diversity. It's like male and female and everything else in this world. There's a unity too, but a diversity with a greater unity to it because God's the object. So don't stick to the Catholic faith, the basic pillars, the Catechism of the Catholic faith, magisterial teaching, of course, but, read through a particular school that particularly excites you, and that's where we're going to. Okay, that's what I got for you. All right, let's try another one here. This is from David. This is a little smaller one. It says, can you please distinguish Stoic indifference from holy indifference, abandonment to Zeus's will versus abandonment to the divine providence? Can you please sing Viva la Vida? Thanks. Love being with you guys. Now, David, you know how to do this, right? So David was one of the fellows on the retreat. It's great to see you here, for at least see your comments, David. Thanks for sending them in. We will not be. Viva la Vida was the kind of theme song. We sang that in the mornings and the evenings. Adam was playing the guitar in that. It was delightful. I hadn't done Coldplay in a while. I will not sing it here. But I don't remember the words, but I could look them up. But that's a great question about holy indifference and Stoic indifference. So one of the big keys to Stoicism is the sense of what is up to you is your own kind of mental states and attitudes and actions according to what you have control of. And then what's not up to you is to be indifferent to, right? Because what's not up to you is not your responsibility in a sense. Now, not to say that means like nothing outside of your own body is your responsibility, but in the sense of any physical thing could be used for good or bad. It doesn't come with a particular tag on it always. Now, Christians will say that, of course, we believe that since God created, things are good, but still, Ignatius takes up this sense of being wholly indifferent to things. St. Paul takes this up too, when St. Paul in his letter says, I'm happy whether I'm going to be here or whether I go to the Lord. I'm happy whether I'm shipwrecked or whether I'm in a tent or whether I'm traveling here or whether I'm here. He has this sense of that he's always able to talk to the Lord, and he's always able to, thanks to God's providence and God's love for him, to use the things of the world for good. The Stoic indifference is more of a like, hold the things of the world at arm's length to order yourself rightly. So it has a sort of egocentric sense. Although, of course, if everyone does this correctly, then we should be okay. But the Christian holy indifference is not to keep things at an arm's length, but to only grasp things in so much as they're helpful to you. Ignatius has this prayer, of course. He says, and this is 23. It's the foundation of the spiritual exercise. He says, we must make ourselves indifferent to all created things as far as we are allowed. That's important, as far as we're allowed, because we might actually have to take up someone's cross with us. But insofar as they're all created things and can be used by God, we don't own them, we don't possess them. We rather walk through this world holding them lightly. It's a bit like if you're a golfer, you know that when you swing a golf club, you want to make sure that you're not gripping it too tightly, but not too loosely, but just enough. All right. Consequently, he says, we should not prefer health to sickness, riches to poverty, honor to dishonor, a long life to a short one. The same holds for all other things. Our one desire and choice should be what is more conducive to the end for which we are created. And that end, of course, is God and his glory. So if God is going to glorify himself in your life through particular situation, this particular job or this particular thing that's not your plan, that's what you're indifferent to. You want his will to be done, not your own. You want your will to be conformed to his will. And that means that you look around the world and what comes to you, the people and circumstances and things, or your authorities. Like I'm a Dominican, so my provincial and my superiors say things, and I'm indifferent to them in the sense that I'm ready and willing to see these as the will of God, unless I have good indication otherwise. But that's the sort of holding things a little gently because it's God who's actually doing the work, and we're not always in control, and very, very rarely in total control of anything, but rather to see ourselves as agents of his working out in his plan and to be happy with that. That's the harder part, but the saints have this sense of this detaching themselves. This is what we do in Lent, detaching themselves from all their own particular desires that are not aligned with God, for instance, and being open to having desires for him. And that's the holy indifference. So you can think of it this way. Stoic indifference has a sort of ego-centered view. So it's more about rationally protecting and ordering your own life and not being worried about things you can't control. Whereas holy indifference is more like preparing yourself for whatever God might will for you in that particular time. Okay? All right, that's it. Thanks, David. Okay, another Patreon. Hello, fathers. I have a question regarding your recent episode on work-life balance. Oh my gosh, I don't know anything about this. Any advice for homeschooling moms who are trying to live a more ordered life? I find it can be difficult to strike a balance when the duties bleed into one another and location stays the same. Thank you for ministry. It has helped me in so many ways. Joni. Thanks, Joni. I did not do this episode, but I'm a Dominican, so I'm just going to jump in here. Francis de Sales says that we pray and we live according to whatever situation we're in. This could be the holy indifference point. So when you're trying to balance out things, you have to take into account the reality that's there, the things that aren't up to you. If you have kids who are very young, they're going to make demands on you that are going to take you away from things otherwise. So I would say having a good, honest realization or like accounting of your time during the day, and then seeing how you can hold fast to a particular rule of life there with that balance. Work today creeps everywhere. So you can answer emails at any time of the day. You can answer emails at the morning, night, and all this. And I email people. I'm guilty of this too. Like I don't respect the normal 9 to 5 boundaries because we all have access to the internet. We're doing a podcast thing right now, even though it's in the evening. So we can easily let our work, whatever it might be, also bleed, as you say, into all the other parts of our life. And just to be aware that things are going to be okay. as long as you have to make some time for yourself and for your life and for your family and such. And those are like just non-negotiables. So whether it's actually like taking in your Google Calendar and marking out, like this time frame is for this time frame, this, like making appointments with yourself and your family as if you would make work appointments or something. That's, some people do and find that really helpful. Other people just have like a daily schedule, and it's okay to say no to things, even if it seems like sometimes you could do those things. Because at the end of the day, the world and everyone around you, especially in work, is always going to ask more from you. Very rarely is a boss going to say, hey, you should take a break a little bit. Just come down a little bit. They're happy for you to work. And to be honest, they don't know what your home life is like. So they don't know the demands on that. So I would say just an honest accounting with yourself, a trust that you can map out what you need to get in this balance, and to be flexible. Sometimes there isn't a lot of good balance on it, but making sure you catch up. Just like with sleep, right? There are times you can do a bunch of 5-hour nights in a row or something, but if you do it too long, you're actually not being effective in what you're not sleeping for. So just having a little humility there too. That's all I got. I don't know exactly what they said, but there we go. Okay. Hi, fathers. At Co-op's book club, Coop's book club last month, we had a theological difficulty I was hoping you would help us settle. I'll try. I'm a philosopher, but I'll give it a go. In Catholic married motherhood circles, it's often said it's your job to get our spouse into heaven. Isn't salvation done by the Savior? I thought it was an instrument of the Lord for my husband, and that my vocation sanctifies me. Good. Do I have responsibility for getting him over the finish line? There was a discussion over the covenant and how there's something unique about that. Clarity, please. Great. All right. Yes. So there's a great, are you responsible for your husband's salvation? In a sense, no. In a sense, yes. Standard kind of answer. Obviously, salvation is due to the grace of God, but God works through instruments. He loves using people. I don't know why. He just thinks this is a good way to do it. He took on flesh in the incarnation so he could save us. He could have saved us in any way. God he's God, totally transcendent. He makes up the rules, you could say. But he chose to use people and instruments. And those are instruments of love, right? He chose to people not as instruments in the sense of just being bodies, but being rational wills, lovers and knowers and lovers. And marriage, or the vowed life, any of those things, is like ramping up that instrumentality. When we give over our lives in a vow to someone else, we take a commitment to them. And that's what JP2 talked about in that great book, Love and Responsibility, that love entails responsibilities. When you say, I do, it includes a commitment to do things. And part of the thing to do is to sanctify. Now, it's not, if that person is still going to always reject, like it's not all of your responsibility to get that person to heaven. But if you're married to someone, and if heaven is growing in love and knowledge of the Lord, and you are an agent of love and knowledge, and because God instrumentalizes us through grace, and because grace has a sort of spillover effect, add all those premises together, the conclusion is that you have a role to play. Now, God can work with you, without you, around you, against you, all these things. But as he wants it to, it seems like he wants to grow us in communities and grow us through the assistance of others. St. Paul talks about this when he says, how are we to have faith unless we have unless we hear the message? How are we to have the message unless we have a preacher? So like the preaching is an aspect of bringing people to faith. The great Holy Spirit works in us, but the preaching is the word that comes to us, sacraments, but also just our relationship of knowledge and love. That's a part of growing in knowledge and love of God. I'm always reminded, and should be reminded, of the Genesis part, Genesis 4, when God comes to Cain after he's killed Abel, and he says, "Where's your brother?" And Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And of course, the rhetorical answer is, yes, you are, because you've been given this man. And particularly in family, those who are close to us and affinities, we have, in a sense, more responsibility because we have more love. Love and responsibility, JP2, go together, right? So I would say it is not your job to get that person to heaven over yourself, in a sense of like, I'll damn myself so my husband go to heaven. But is part of your role in being married to someone, or is part of my role in being a Dominican with Father Patrick, in assisting him and them to go to heaven? Yeah, because if God is love, and the more we love properly, the closer we get to God, then since I'm called to love my brother, I'm in a sense called to save him too, in that particular way. So it's a high calling, but it's a beautiful one too. It reminds us that we have these relationships with others that are meaningful for eternity too. That we're helping them over the finish line, as you say, but also at the starting block too, and all during the race. Okay. Let's see. Hold on a minute. Let's see. Chris from the retreat. I think this is Chris from the retreat. Thanks, Chris. Said, would Father Bonaventure consider posting philosophy lectures to YouTube? I will consider it. I'm not going to do it though, but I'll consider it. Okay, great. Let's go to some people here already. Question. Father Pine recently said in his Pints Chesterton video that Father Vincent McNabb is said to have paid Chesterton a Dominican privilege of singing the Salve right before his death. Is this something you friars still do for your brother priests, Dominican sisters, and friends? Yes, this is great. So the Salve Regina, we have a beautiful one, the Dominican chant. You can probably find it. Salve. The general Roman one is Salve Regina, but the Dominican one is like it's more movement. Why? Because it's sung at night after our final night prayer. Our night prayer in general as Dominicans is our most elaborate because it's the only one that every Dominican was sure to be at. Oftentimes you'd be out preaching during the day or working in study like Thomas Aquinas, and you'd pray some of the offices with your secretary or with your brother preaching when you're wandering around. But Compline, because you had to be back at night into a convent to sleep most of the time, right? You can't find B&Bs back then or, sort of Airbnbs or what have you. So you had to find a convent. So Compline was something that all Dominicans were at. And it meant that Dominicans developed those chants most exquisitely. So if you haven't heard a Dominican Compline, it's a beautiful thing. The brothers on the retreat, the men's retreat, we got to sing Compline every night, and they got to follow along with us with special Salve Regina, and then the O Lumen, a special prayer to O Light of the Church. That's St. Dominic. The Salve, because early in Dominican order, Mary was seen to be going through and blessing the brothers at night. So she has a particular care of Dominicans, or so we say. And this was a prayer that was also associated with martyrdoms and praying the Salve during martyrdoms, particularly. And so we have this great tradition of it's our kind of go-to prayer at the side of a brother who's dying. It's a prayer every night as we pray to sleep and for, of course, a good death as well. We trust ourselves to Mary. Some people trust themselves to Joseph, but of course for us, we trust ourselves to Mary that she might assist us as we go to bed and as we wake up. And as we end this life, she has special care for us. So the Salve is something we do pray whenever we have a Dominican brother dying. It's frequently prayed at the bedside, and especially when the brother's passed away, we'll sing it at the graveside. All of this thing we layered on because their Salve is beautiful, and it's wonderful to have Mary as our mother in a particular way. So yes, it's a Dominican thing we do. And if you want to listen to Dominican Salve, just type in Dominican Salve on YouTube, and you can hear us. You might even be able to hear the Dominican Friars from here, this house, because we record some of our stuff. There you go. Okay. So, Gray Doc 95, let's go. All right, that's good. And Bearded no less, what a rare sight. That's Father Patrick. Wish I could have been with you guys on this retreat. Next time, Greg. So Father Patrick's got a beard. Father Gregory got a beard. Father Joseph Anthony's always kind of had a beard. It's just Father Jacob Birch and myself. Although I grew a little one for the retreat because I didn't want to shave. But I don't have a beard for a particular reason. But that's for a later episode. All right, Sean Connolly, another member of our Godsplaining Cane Toads team. So Cane Toads for the win, indeed. Okay, Chris, here we go. This is the man who wants me to put stuff online, YouTube things. Not gonna happen. We'll see though. Slide under cells. This is what Father Patrick was talking about. More like turbo gravity powered slip and slide with a ramp at the bottom. This was cool. This slide at this camp was basically just a slip and slide on a giant hill that had like a ramp at the end of it. So it launched you about, 8 feet in the air or something, which was great. So that's, slide isn't right. It's not really a slide. It's a turbo powered slip and slide, turbo gravity powered. There we go. Okay. Ernesto, love it. Okay. Nate, don't forget about food, the food. Melissa totally spoiled us. Yeah, Nate was on there. What were their delicious cooking? We had, camp food can sometimes be, this food was spectacular. So like, we're just making a big pitch for this men's wilderness retreat thing. It was spectacular. The food was excellent. Melissa went out of her way to cook delicious meals, tons of food for men, the snacks, the treats, the desserts, everything was fantastic. So shout out to Melissa. Fantastic. This fire, formerly known as Bonaventure, now Stoaventure. Just for this episode though, Slide Adventure. All right, Adam Kane. Why are cane toads so good at bombardment? We mentioned this, Adam. This is like a reunion for the men's retreat. So Adam was on the retreat, and the cane toads, we played a game of bombardment, which is kind of like an insane version of dodgeball, but it's for grown men. And it requires a lot of running and a lot of throwing. And our team won, I think, 3 out of 5 of the rounds, maybe even more. It's hard to say. So good luck for that. All right, stoicism definitely got saved. Thanks, Chris. Thanks to you, my friend. Thank you. Have a wonderful treat, Father Patrick. Indeed. Yeah, Father Patrick, get on it. Okay. Again, men, you all played camp games. Now I'm really sad. Yeah, FOMO elevated. But next year, it's coming back. Okay. HG Mass. Hi, Father Bonaventure. I had a discussion with a Protestant Christian convert. So is he a convert to Protestantism? We'll see. About the church teaching, and she claims that it's Marxist socialist teaching, therefore wrong. Okay. I know that there are similarities, on paper at least. However, as she is more sola scriptura, don't give that up to her. You're just as sola scriptura as she is. In fact, more so, because remember, before there was a written text of the Bible, there were disciples. So the church is the source of the scriptures with the Holy Spirit, right? The apostles and their teachings and their writings and their stories, inspired by the Holy Spirit, get written down. But it's not like Christianity didn't exist until the canon, the Bible, is certified and finished at 100 or something around there. So if you want sola scriptura, Catholic Church. Okay, how do I explain to her that the teachings are sound? Thanks again. This is a great question. In America, sometimes we get worried about social teaching. It sounds like social justice kind of stuff, and it sounds a little progressive. Catholics are both and people. This is really important that we care about not just the mind. Well, I was a Protestant, so I'm just going to say these sort of things. But Protestantism sometimes can be just kind of a mental thing. Not that mental things are bad. Not like knowing the right doctrines and having good knowledge of the Bible and the quotes and all of that. And having a great personal relationship with the Lord. Very important. Very important. But you don't have to give up any of that to also care about, for instance, your body, the sexual teachings of the church, like chastity, and all of that, theology of the body, JP2, this kind of stuff, or the society, the common good, right? The church is a society. It's a church militant here, and there's saints. It's a big society that transgresses all sorts of boundaries, you could say, between heaven and earth. But also there's a society out there. It's a world that's supposed to be redeemed. And Catholics have always taken it seriously that there's nothing we're not going to grab and claim as ours, because there's nothing that Christ didn't claim as his. He's as we say, celebrate at the end of the ordinary time, right before Advent, Christ the King Sunday. He's the King of everything. So that means that we have an ability to say something about everything, and we have an ability to deal with everything, and we ought to, if it's about knowledge and charity. It's about the common good, if it's about the good of souls. And our souls come with bodies, and our souls and bodies relate in societies. So the Catholic social teaching is about the society. Now, for individualists or libertarians, I'm libertarian leaning myself, sometimes I get a little bit squirrely and I feel like it's kind of Marxist. And you just have to tell yourself, not either or, both and. JP2 wrote a lot of social teaching encyclicals. A lot of the social church doctrines, of course, are developed at the end of Leo XIII, Rerum Novarum, the end of the 19th century, and then passing into the 20th century when the church said we've really got to help society out because society is going a little bit away from God, right? Christendom had ended, and we have to figure out what to do with it. So the social teachings are, you could see, the gospel filtered through the church for the world. Now, things are going to get messy, and they get a little vague there too. The church does not specialize in economics per se, nor politics per se, nor any of those things per se. Just because I'm a priest doesn't mean I'm good at biology automatically, or politics, or economics. But it does mean that there are certain principles, dignity of the human person, solidarity, the common good, all of these that should structure our dealings with the world. And sometimes it's just possible that people who are generally wrong get things right. So if, for instance, in the Marxist line, if you read John Paul II's Labor Exertions, so on the dignity of work, you'll find this encyclical. He talks a lot about modern economy and how work can be alienating. Now, that's a term from Marx. I wrote a short little paper for my class, and I talked about this, about the kind of question, is John Paul a Marxist? No, it just turns out that alienation, the idea that you can become disassociated from your work, right? And you can just be a cog in a wheel, and that's dehumanizing, that's a true notion. And today we can find it all the time. And so John Paul II, reflecting on what it means to be a person and that we act morally in our lives, in our works and all of that, decided that he needed to say something about how work, and modern work particularly, was threatening the notion of our personhood and our dignity. And so if you read that encyclical, you'll see the word alienation in there, and you'll see things that sound a little Marxist, but they're not. It just turns out that Marx, blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. And Catholics, we love to spoil Egyptians. This is Augustine's phrase, right? Takes it from the story, of course, in Exodus, where the Israelites take the gold from the Egyptians and go away with it. And this is what Augustine thinks the church does with all that's there. Like we take what they have that's good, not steal it. But if they're going to give it to us, if Marx is going to write, we're going to read that stuff and figure out what's good and take it. And we don't have to be afraid of any of that stuff. So I would just encourage you, when you're talking to this person, one, to ask, well, what particular stuff is Marxist? And then ask whether, well, is it true? And how does it relate to human dignity? And just encourage someone to say, don't be an either or kind of person, right? Be a both and kind of person. God cares not just about your immortal soul, but also about the creation he made. And also your immortal soul has a lot to do with how you work in this world. Okay. Also, in the context of the turmoil in the UK right now, where I reside, I was there for a couple of years. What does the church teach about freedom of speech, expression, limits of each? That's a specific case. I don't know what to say about the UK situation, but there is stuff in the Catechism about freedom of speech. And of course, JP2 in his encyclicals talks about how the freedom of speech, which we can take a lot from John Stuart Mill on this, is essential to truth-telling. And so to live in the truth means that we have to have the ability to be able to speak the truth. So it's a political right. There are limits. You can't yell fire in a movie theater because it might be dangerous to people. So there are limits, of course. That's not absolute. So little things are absolute in that way. But political freedom of speech is very important. Okay. Jose De Martin. Hi, Father. I was having a cool conversation about whether or not God can make something eternal. Good question. I'm not exactly sure the technical way to explain it. My intuition was no. Could you explain it? Great question. We can't make anything eternal like himself, because he doesn't like. Yeah. So I think your intuition's right that like eternity matching he's not going to create other gods, right? God doesn't create gods. That's like a pagan sort of thing. And so God doesn't create, he generates, the Trinity is the eternal processions, right? But that's not creation. Creation comes from nothing, and it's always lesser than him. So in a sense, you could say nothing can be on the same grade of being as him, right? Because anytime he creates something, it's always going to be finite, because at least it didn't exist before, right? And it's dependent upon him. And so it can't be equal to him, because then we've got dualism and two gods. So you're right about that. But he can make things that have an everlasting, immortal duration to them. For instance, souls and angels. We don't believe that when you die, you get annihilated. Some people thought this true, and maybe some people today think this is true, but it's not true. Your soul is immortal because it's spiritual. This is a tricky philosophical argument, but just go with me on it. So in a sense, your body can be damaged very well, and your soul can take some damage in the sense of its accidents, but its substance is not touched by material things in that way, right? There's some core of it that's dependent only upon God, because he's the one who created in that particular way. So we, unlike everything else you see around us, are immortal in a way, right? Not in the sense that we can take on God, but in the sense that we're not annihilating. We're going to have our souls separated from our bodies at some point, most likely, unless you're Virgin Mary, maybe Elijah. But we're always going to be there, right? And that's why it's important to pay attention in this life and to get to know Jesus Christ and to be a saint, because there's only two options. You don't get the annihilation option. All right, you either get to be a saint in heaven for eternity, or you get to be in another place for eternity, but you have no other option. And that's a little scary, but because Jesus loves you and wants you to come to know him, it's up to you whether you take up on that. Okay, Nate, I think my Patreon question got pushed together with the long anonymous one. My question fit in 2 YouTube comments. Nice. Don't know what to do about that. Stoicism. Yes. So we also coined Stoicism. So Stoicism is the kind of working on the passion, keeping the passions at bay. And Stoicism is enjoying the good things in conversation, like cigars, stogies, and the conversation, because philosophy is done in conversation with each other, enjoying God's creation and our time together. And stogies just seem to do that sometimes. Okay. All right. Jose, here we go. Also, do you actually like to sail sailboats, or is your preference for the purpose of contradicting Father Patrick's appreciation for motorboats? That's a great question, Jose. I do. My father taught me how to sail, and I sail with him, and he's a great man. And so that I don't get to sail as much as I used to, obviously, but I do indeed sail, and so it's experiential knowledge and not just for contradiction. But I'm a little of a contrarian, so I wouldn't be surprised why you would think that. Okay, oh my gosh, there's so many questions. We're going to have to move here. Let's see how we go. Declan, okay, yeah, this is a Pine question. What do you think the Ark inhabitants did for leisure? What would you have done to occupy your time in the Ark if reading and praying were not available? There's a lot of animals there, so I'd probably hold and played with animals. Obviously, I'd find the toads. Okay, hello, Father Slide Adventure. It's Kyle, and Father Patrick, it's Kyle. Kyle, great to see you again. Thanks for this great weekend. Okay. Hi, Nate and Chris as well. Yeah, look at this reunion. All right, Sean, only joined at the beginning, can't stay. Wanted to say hi to everyone in the retreat. What a blessing. See, look at that. Fantastic. Kyle, how do you... Now this is just like a comment box. Okay. Thanks for a series of lessons. Good luck. Thanks so much. Kyle, thanks for the PDF of Dominican Solemnity. There you go. So you can find Dominican Solemnity and hear that, as I mentioned before. Okay. Oh, Adam, did cane toads kill the Abel toads? Unknowable. It's a mystery back in the prehistoric times of the patriarchs. Okay, I'll take the W on the consideration. You will indeed. Okay, fantastic. You guys we're gonna skip the comments for these guys. Let's go to Reagan. Reagan, how are you? Hi, Father. I hope you're doing well. I am. I was recently talking with a friend about sanctification and holiness. Fantastic. And we got into the idea of desiring heaven for selfish reasons without God in mind. This idea I almost did, but staved it off so far, but my voice hasn't recovered yet. Was quite confused to me. Is there something that's real to watch out for? Oh, this is a good question. So here's the interesting part. The three theological virtues are faith, hope, and charity. Faith, of course, is the holding fast to the truths of the faith, right? It's an intellectual virtue. Hope and charity are virtues of the will, theological virtues. So it's God's grace working not the mind, you could say, the intellect, but rather working the will. Charity, of course, is loving God for God's sake. Hope is loving God for the sake of heaven, which is for you, right? So hope, you might think, oh man, hope's the kind of egocentric one, an egotist one, and charity is the really altruistic, that's the good one. And but hope is a virtue, right? It is good to want good things. You should want to feel good. Ultimately, you should want to be saved, right? Now, you don't want to be saved because of your particular, like, I get to do what I want in heaven, but you should want to be saved. So I don't like the selfish language because it pins this modern notion of there's self-directed things and there's other directed things, and self-directed things are bad and other directed things are good. Like, for instance, you could say, well, self-directed is me eating all my meals or some of my meals, and other directed is giving all my food to others. But if you gave all your food to others, that would be unselfish, but it wouldn't be good. Because God gave you your body to take care of. He wants you to go to heaven. He wants you to help others through marriage and other things to be sanctified. And that means taking care of yourself. You have responsibility for that. He created you and he wants you to be good. And he wants you to be good eternally. So you can want salvation for the goods of it. But of course, the ultimate good of salvation is for God's glory, right? But it's a bit like the flip side, maybe, I'm going to go on the limb here, between imperfect and perfect contrition, right? Imperfect contrition is when you're in the confessional and you're sorry because you're worried about hell. And that's good. That's enough. You should be worried about hell, right? Because God wants you in heaven. He wants you to be happy. That's why he created you, right? You're the one who's making yourself miserable. Perfect contrition is you're sorry for your sins because it offended God, right? Of course, it's bad for you, but really you didn't want to offend your best friend. In the same way, I think that's like hope and charity. So don't, again, not either or, both and. Hope and charity. Okay. Question, Chris, what did Kant mean when he said existence is not a predicate? Okay, that's cool. Really quickly, because we only have a couple minutes left. So when Kant says existence is not a predicate, what he means is a lot of proofs of God are like God is all-knowing, all this, saying things about them. Like when I predicate of me, I could say I'm 5'10", I have glasses, I have a habit on, I'm in front of a screen, and I exist. But notice the last one was already included in the others, right? So existence isn't something that you add to me in the way that you do with those other things, right? If I lose existence, then it's not like the other predicates are there. So what Kant says, and what found a lot of modern logic picked this up in a complicated story, is that Kant said, when we talk about like the proof of God and we prove that he's this, and this, we don't prove that he exists in that same way. We don't prove that God exists in the way that we prove that he's all loving, that he's all powerful, he's all this. Those are attributes of him, but there has to be already an existing God to have those attributes. So existence is not a accident, a predicate, something you say of something, right? It's rather the thing existing. So it's a different thing. So it just means that if you do a proof of God's existence, like you're proving that God exists, Kant says you got to be careful with that. You have to do it in a tricky way because you're not proving that God's strong or almighty or omniscient or omnipotent. You've got to treat it do a different kind of proof for it. I think he's right about that. It doesn't vitiate the proofs. And most of the proofs aren't aiming to prove his existence in that way, but you can see how that goes. Okay. Oh, we already got this one. Gonzi, I have a question. Hard time with the rosary. I find being able to meditate on the mysteries and saying the prayers very distracting. I spend too much time trying to balance prayer and meditate. Yeah, help. Okay, rosary. One of the things you can do is if you have little holy cards or something, you can get pictures of each of the mysteries and you can look at them while you're praying that particular decade. That can be really helpful at that point. The other part is to just meditate on the particular words you're saying. So, Hail Mary, full of grace, but focus on that particular word, So aim for something small. Don't aim for like the whole thing, but just have small meditative targets, you could say. And that will help you out, I think. But sometimes praying the rosary is just opening a space for God to kind of talk and rework on you, and you don't always see him working on that. So it's okay if you get distracted sometimes. Totally fine. Okay. Kyle, Father Slide Adventure, that's me. Second question, any advice on fighting addiction to sins of lust, particularly self-pleasure? That's just any sins of the flesh really is about near occasions of sin. Just be honest with yourself about where and these kind of temptations that you have, they most come up, and avoiding those. It's too hard to stop our passions when they're on the move, you could say, but if you can make sure they're not at the bus station, then they're not going to get on that sort of thing. So just know you have patterns. I'm sure you have patterns. And just be honest with those things and just tell yourself, I'm going to stop even farther back, and you'll find that really makes a difference. You're taking the answers onto argument. I'm really taken by it. I think if you're a philosopher, you do. There's just something about it's really cool. I can't explain it though, but it works in the modal proof. Okay. Almost done here. We're going to make it. Also, Father, I got in a small debate with a fellow retreatant who said Thomas preached double predestination. How would you argue against that? He doesn't. He gets really close though. Double predestination is that God chooses those for eternal salvation, and he also chooses those positively for damnation. So God treats those saved, elected, and those reprobated in the same fashion, same will. Thomas thinks you might call a single predestination kind of person, right? So he's going to say that God, of course, elects those to be saved, but he doesn't positively will that those who are not saved are damned. It's tricky. He permits damnation, but the cause of damnation is sin. And since God can't cause sin by that necessity, he can't reprobate anyone of his positive decree. He can't cause them to sin, but he can permit them to sin and not give them the grace to be saved. Now, you might think this is splitting hairs, but it makes a big difference if you let someone go off a cliff and you push someone off a cliff. And double predestination has a sense of pushing someone off a cliff and not letting someone go off a cliff. That's just a quick shorthand there. I used to be a Calvinist, so I was a double predestination man. So it's not, and Dominicans often get accused of double predestination, and we're really close. Because why? Because God's in control. God's not waiting for you. God's in control. But that permissive and positive sense plays an important part, even though it's a distinction. Some philosophical distinctions really do work, and that's indeed what that distinction does. Okay. Okay. I think that, wow. Did I get through all of these with no times left? Okay, Kyle. Cane Toads for the win as well. Hi, fathers. Where's the best place to learn Dominican hymns and psalmody for the office? If you go to liturgicalmovement.org or something, I think it's Augustine Thompson. There's a whole Dominican chant page. So if you go to, I think it's liturgical movement or something, just type in Augustine Thompson OP and you'll get his. And he has all of the stuff online, also how to chant Dominican stuff, to hear it, cites about it, really good commentary. He's a Western Province Dominican. He's an historian, but he's compiled a ton of liturgical texts. So if you want to know all the Dominican stuff, liturgical singing otherwise, then that's where you go. That's the great resource. All right. I apologize if I've missed anyone's comments. If I've spoken too fast, I apologize, but I'm not going to change that. So there's no real amendment of life there. So apologize. So I kind of apologize for that. But it looks like we got through everything. Thanks for tuning in. I'm sorry that Father Patrick had to go. Please say a quick prayer for him and his trips. He's a wandering man. For me, I'm just back to writing on my favorite pietist philosophers and Immanuel Kant, and getting ready for students to come to school and start classes in 2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks. Too short, but I love teaching, so it'll be exciting. So thanks for tuning in. Please do like us, subscribe to us on Patreon, give a donation, whatever you want to do. We'd love to have you sign up for the retreats. We'd love to have you in the men's retreat if you're a man. And whatever other treats. We have Days of Recollection coming up, different places around. I think we'll be in New York City in October sometime. We're going to be in Nashville, I think, at some point. So moving around, maybe Texas, who knows? We'll see. Let us know if you want us to go to your city. We'd love to meet you. It's just great to see face-to-face, because that's what we're going for, is face-to-face with our Lord. So please know of our prayers for you. We offer masses and rosaries for all of you Patreon supporters and those in the Godsplaining community. And please pray for us, and we'll catch you next time on Godsplaining.